for joining.
Great, thank you. So 9 months ago, the human population on the planet hit 7 billion people. Now in 1830, the world population was just 1 billion. That means that it took 200,000 years for Homo sapiens to procreate to reach 1 billion people on the planet at the same time. But the second billion took only 100 years. 200,000 years to make 1 billion people, 100 years to get the second billion. Now, we add 1 billion people to the planet every 12 years. Wow. Now, this is a success story. It's a success of medicine and agriculture. And in terms of survival of the species, we are doing great. And in terms of religion, we're doing great. Go forth and multiply. We've done it. And now we have to stop. Otherwise, it's going to be our downfall. Just to give an example, in 1991 in Bangladesh, there was a hurricane that killed 139,000 people, one hurricane. Do you know how long it took for Bangladesh to replace those 139,000 people with new births? 2.5 weeks. Wow. The Earth's population is only growing by 1% a year, and that doesn't sound like very much. But 1% of 7 billion is a big number. It is 220,000 people a day added to the planet. It's almost 250,000 people a day added to the planet after deaths every single day. And guess what? That's not sustainable. It's not sustainable, so what's going to happen? Eventually the world's population is going to stop growing. The question is, how? Is it going to stop growing because of disease and famine and because we're having a nuclear war over resources? Or is it going to stop growing because we choose to have smaller families? And by smaller families, I mean one-child families. And this is where people start to get afraid of the discussion about overpopulation because they think, oh, sorry, I'm talking a little fast. They think I want to take away their rights to have children. And that's not true. I want to give people rights. And populationists like me, we want to give people rights. Because forcing people to have fewer children doesn't work in the long run. Actually, the fastest way to stabilize and lower the world population is to educate girls and empower women. And give everyone access to birth control. And those are good things, right? But we have to do something else along with that. We have to change, we have to embrace the idea that a one-child family is a good thing. Because for thousands of years we've been inculcated with this idea that big families are happy families. And only children are lonely children. And couples who don't have children are childless instead of child-free. And for a long time, that worked because our survival depended upon us procreating. But now our survival depends upon us not procreating. We actually have to rewire our cultures and our biology to appreciate the benefits of a one-child family. Now, you'll read in the media a lot of gloom and doom about the economy. Population falls. And that's because capitalism is based on eternal growth. It needs more and more consumers. And you know what? Yes, there will be, our economy will suffer if our population lowers, but it will be less suffering than if we run out of oil and food and water, because there's going to be 10 billion people on the planet in 40 years. Now, a lot of people say, well, we should be the ones having babies. Those of us who are friends of Steve and go to salons and things like that. We're smart. We're educated. We can afford kids. Our kids might save the planet. But actually, when you're in America, you use 32 times the resources of someone who lives in a poor developing country. So that's why it's even more important that us in America have small families. Now, for everyone to have a high quality of life on the planet, we can't just stabilize the population. I believe we actually have to lower it. And I believe that that number is 2 billion people on the planet. And now there's 7 billion. So it sounds radical. But guess what? It's just the number of people that were on the planet 80 years ago. So here's just a recap. We need to change our idea of what an ideal family looks like. We need to talk about the issue. It's not about taking rights away. It's about giving women rights, children rights, and future generations rights. And last of all, we have to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And we have to choose to just have one child or fewer. Thanks.
my name's Ian, and I love you.
That's my husband, and he's had a vasectomy.
Could you do 12 seconds on the Sabado method and your recent work in West Africa, please?
One of the fastest ways to change culture is through the media, and a lot of us are in the media. And there's a wonderful group called Population Media Center, which actually goes around and produces radio dramas and television shows around the world that role model positive role of people and storylines that feature using birth control and having one-child families and things like that, and it's proven to be incredibly effective. One of the reasons Brazil has such a low fertility rate is because their soap operas are so popular. And soap operas generally don't have a lot of kids in them, and people are upper middle class and middle class. So hey, who knew soap operas? They can save the world.
So I'm a physician, and in 1986, my first child I delivered was to a 13-year-old child who had an abortion at age 12 because she was too young. At that birth, there were 7 generations of women and girls because in their family, the tradition was to have a child at age 13. So that this was at a city hospital, so that one could go on to welfare and food stamps and not finish high school. My mission, and this is what she's telling me, and I'm thinking, you know, where have we, these people, we are providing for them, but we have failed to provide to teach them that having a child, starting your one of 4 or 5 families in these lower socioeconomic circles at age 13 may not be the optimal thing. So how can organizations like that reach out to those families and those kids who, God knows how many generations now we have of them having children at 13 because they don't see a different way.
Well, MTV, they're actually producing 2 television shows on Univision and Spanish MTV because the Latino community the girls do tend to have children at an earlier age, but 40% of pregnancies in the United States and on average all over the world are unintended. It doesn't mean they're unwanted, they're unintended. So it's with everyone. And our government gives us tax deductions for the extra children that we have. So our government is also encouraging us to have babies. What if they gave tax deductions for not having children? Thanks.
I love what you say about empowering women. I'm so right there with you, but I have 2 questions, kind of. One, I agree that the way that the planet is running now, we won't be able to sustain. But if we were running differently, if our houses were running differently, if we were maybe mirroring nature, taking what we needed, could 7 billion sustain on the Earth? I mean, who are we to determine the number, but could we sustain on the Earth if we were doing things differently? And then 2, is population just the answer to, you know, climate change, all these things? It seems like they're an outgrowth of the vision of the way we all see the world. So can you address those?
Well, right now we're using 50% more of the Earth's resources than it can actually give back to us. So we're already overusing our capital, so to speak. And so I think this kind of thinking is the one that we want to invent things. It's going to take too long. We don't have time. Already 2 billion people are going to be added to the planet, even if we all have 2 kids or fewer now. So we can't wait for wishful thinking. China, in the 70s, this is what gave population a bad name, populations like myself a bad name, but China insisted on people having just 1 child per family. They averted 300 million deaths through famine. So I can't judge them. I really can't. And so we don't want to get to there because we're going to, if we don't do it now, so that's the problem, is this kind of visionary thinking. It's math. It's math. We have to stop making babies.
Sorry guys, we gotta move on, but we have a website.
My website is alexandrapaul.com, and I do have information on population, but Population Media Center I think is doing excellent work. And I recommend, so populationmediacenter.org.
And just to clarify, the problem is like having kids, like we can practice, right? Doesn't happen with me.